us now from Capitol Hill, Republican Senator from Oklahoma, Senator Tom Coburn. Good to have you back on the show, Senator.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Well, let's start with Edward Snowden. Oh, you're here.
Question. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good. All right, Senator. I'm just looking at, like, the leader of Ecuador, who's inviting a tussle with the U.S. over Snowden, which is one of the headlines in the Washington Post. First of all, is there anything that we can do to try and track him down? And there's a lot of criticism of the administration for being feckless or for not being effective enough or not being aggressive enough with China and Russia. But yet, have we heard of defectors or people in this situation who we've been able to bring back home?
You know, I really don't know the answer to your question. I think we would have a tough time forcing. I mean, obviously there needs to be a price paid by China for not handing him over.
So what is that?
It's probably not going to be public in terms of diplomatic circles. The next time they really need something that only we can deliver, it probably isn't going to happen. But it's not going to be published. We're not going to embarrass him. The fact is he's out there. I don't think he's the issue right now. What is the issue is the lack of frank discussion on what these programs are, how they work, and why they're necessary to keep us free. And you know, I think one of your teases coming in was some of the statements I've made. Well, I don't know of any federal program that gets more oversight or anything close to the oversight that the 702 and 215 does, which is 2 to 3 times a month by the Intelligence Committee in the U.S. Senate. So what I'd like to see is the rest of the federal government programs get the same kind of oversight this did. We wouldn't have any deficit. We wouldn't have any debt if we did that.
There you go. That's one way of looking at it.
Well, it's true. You know, this is stuff that has gone over with a fine-tooth comb. We have staff people that are out there all the time. I think it's a very necessary and constitutional program that Congress did know about. All of the senators who expressed shock and awe shock and awe to their own detriment because they all were informed of it.
Yeah, because they didn't go to the briefings. Mike Barnacle has a question.
Hey, Senator, let's go back a bit to the original point that Mika raised with you. 3 weeks ago, the President of the United States, who's a friend of yours, met with the President of China in Palm Springs. It seemed to be a friendly meeting. Last week, the President of the United States met with Vladimir Putin, the head of Russia. It seemed to be
that was not a friendly meeting.
Right, it did not look like a friendly meeting. But now we are at the point where both countries, China and Russia, have basically said, we don't care what your needs are in terms of your internal security, in terms of your need to have Snowden brought back to the United States. We just don't care about this request. How does this happen internally, or do you know?
Well, I probably, Mike, am not the one to answer. I think what is happening is really some failed foreign policy that's now accumulating in terms of being able to exercise some courtesy when we need it, without us losing face, and I don't think that's going to happen. And I think, you know, I think China's enjoying this, and I know Russia's enjoying it.
Big time.
And it helps them in terms of what they're doing in the world. I think that one of the number one things is I'm not as worried about the foreign policy on this as I am the domestic policy. I would have hoped that President Obama would have had a nationwide television show and just talk to the country about here's what's going on in the world, here's what this program does, and really clarify what it really does and what it really doesn't do, regardless of all the inflammatory statements that you've heard certain senators make, which are absolutely unfounded and untrue.
Tom, it's Ed Rendell, and I agree with you. I think the president should have done a better job of explaining what's at stake here. But I also think it's got to be in every field of endeavor. There has to be consequences for bad behavior. The Chinese, I understand, want this Smithfield deal approved, and they want it approved quickly. If I were president, I'd put that deal on ice. I'd make them come beg to us.
I'd agree. I agree with that. But I wouldn't connect them publicly like you just did. I'd just say that, well, you know, by the way, this isn't going to happen.
Well, I'm a broadcaster now. I'm not in government. I can do anything I want.
supposedly in government we can too. It's supposed to be.
But that's what I mean. There has to be consequences for bad behavior.
I'm sure there will be.
Well, let's hope.
But the question is whether you do that publicly and make it a bigger deal than what it needs to be. First of all, I thought Secretary of State Kerry made a great point yesterday.
Yes, I was just thinking of this.
You know, here's a guy that cares about internet freedom who now has stated that the reason he went to work for the contractor was to steal the information.
Right.
So, so he had motive and committed a crime. And where does he go? China and Russia and Ecuador and Cuba. You know, what we have is not the whole story yet.
Hey,
I agree
Tom,
with that completely.
Tom, let me ask you a quick question about the Republican Party. John Kasich, our friend, a guy we worked with years ago, just got new approval ratings out. Quinnipiac says that he's plus 20, 53% to 33%. I was just checking some governors' job approval numbers. Bob McDonnell, he is plus 32%. Chris Christie is plus 43%. Your governor in Oklahoma, another Republican, Mary Fallin, she is plus 53%.
Wow.
I could go down the list of Republican governors. At the top of the list, Matt Mead, plus 68% out of Wyoming. I mean, go down the list. And you can pick states that Barack Obama won: Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey. And Republicans are doing extraordinarily well there. Meanwhile, Congress has a 10% approval rating. What can Washington, D.C. Republicans learn from governors across the nation, Republicans? Because, you know, one of these days I'd like us to win the White House again, so when Supreme Court decisions come out, they may go our way.
I don't think they're comparable, Joe. First of all, Washington is despised whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, and rightly so, because we haven't had our nose taking care of business, and we haven't had the leadership we need. And the other thing is governor controls the news line in their state, and so you have real leadership. For each party, whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor. I bet you if you go and look at the Democrat governors that they're in pretty good shape in their states too. So I don't think it's comparable. I think the problem is Washington's a mess. One of the problems that we have is people don't have any confidence that you see a deal like the immigration. Instead of going through appropriate committees, like Homeland Security on border fence and securing the border. What we have is people write a bill over a weekend and it comes out and we approve it. I mean, it's just we're not earning their trust because we're not acting in a way that we should get their trust.
Wow.
And so I think it's really understandable. And I don't think it's necessarily Republicans. I think it's the institution of Congress that is so void of leadership and principle, and everything's measured in a political spectrum rather than in a policy spectrum. And you know as well as I do, good policy is good politics, and it's good for America if you have good policy.
Is it good policy for 3 Republican senators to stop the budgetary process after people like myself have been complaining for 4 years about Democrats not putting a budget on the floor and voting for it?
Look, I've disagreed with that strategy. I've spoken my conference on it. I've spoke on the Senate floor. You do not have any moral authority to complain about getting shut out on amendments when once they do regular order, you won't allow the regular order to work. And I understand what they're worried about, but the fact is that's the way it works. And so it may ring well with certain individuals that rate members of Congress. But, I believe if you want to be treated fair, you have to treat other people fair. And you can't complain about being treated unfairly. And then as soon as you get an opportunity, turn around and do the same thing to them.
It's unbelievable.
And so I disagree with the strategy. I think it makes us look, and that's another reason why Americans are sick of this place. Real leadership puts things, you know, Joe, it goes back to this. The first 2 years I was in the Senate, it was a wonderful place to be, not because we were in the majority, because most of my amendments were against Republicans, but because you could offer any amendment at any time and nobody thought you didn't have the right to do it. And so there was a governor, a modulator on you, so you used your own judgment to not go too far. And so now there's not, you know, I've got 13 amendments on this bill. I had 12 on the Farm Bill. I've had one amendment in 3 months allowed a vote on the Senate floor.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, and the Senate is totally dysfunctional because it is now a U.S. House of Representatives with the Rules Committee of Harry Reid alone.
All right, Senator Tom Coburn, thank you so much. We greatly
See you guys.
appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Cheerful day. I get him
Sounds
smiling.
like the sixth circle of hell.
Well, you know, it really is.
You know?
It really is. The Senate,
The Senate becomes the House
Well, you know,
with a
that-
one-man rule committee. That's horrible.
Well, you know, I mean, anybody that hasn't been in the House knows the Rules Committee. It's not a democracy, and now that's happening in the Senate. We'll be right back.